Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here in the Space Coast. I'm joined by a bunch of leaders that further exemplify why we are not and will never be California. This is Florida, the anti-rioting state. So I'm glad to be joined here today by your great Sheriff, Wayne Ivey. We have a new ICE liaison in the state of Florida, which is one of our big announcements today. Agent Anthony Coker, who you'll hear from. FHP Colonel Gary Howes, who leads the troopers. Florida's public safety czar, Larry Keefe. We have your great state attorney, Will Shiner, and Senator Debbie Mayfield. So thank you all for being here today. Two big announcements. One, we're excited to be the first state to announce our own ICE agent embed in the state. Agent Coker will be housed here with our leadership team in Florida as we work to support the Trump administration's efforts to combat illegal immigration. We have a great collaborative operation with the feds, with ICE, and we're very, very proud to support them. So thank you for being here with us today. Number two, we're going to talk about a new program that we're executing to protect ICE agents. Around the country, especially in California, you're seeing a new effort where leftist groups are attacking ICE agents by revealing their personal identifying information, including family information. This is called doxing, if you're not yet aware. Releasing this public information for the purposes of intimidating, threatening, and distracting them from their duties. We're not going to tolerate that in Florida. That is illegal in Florida. If we find you doing that, we will hold you accountable, and we'll talk a little bit about our program there. But as an overarching matter, we are not California. We do not allow rioting in the state of Florida. It's been 4 or 5 years now since the senator and her team passed the Anti-Rioting Act in Florida. As always, we are proactive. And if you want to throw things at vehicles, rocks, or other objects, you're going to do time. If you want to light things on fire and put people in harm's way, you're going to do time. If you want to burn down businesses, if you want to wreak havoc and destruction in Florida, we have enhanced penalties to ensure you will do time. So we do not tolerate rioting, as groups talk about assembling over the weekend. We haven't seen much of that in Florida. But if you do, these guys, the Sheriff's Office, Colonel Howes, and the team, we are ready across the state to ensure that it is nipped in the bud right away. So today, we're excited to announce our collaborative work with ICE. The doxing is not going to happen. We've set up a program where any ICE agent that believes personal identifying information has been revealed will be able to report that to Colonel Howes and the FHP team so that they can begin, routine checkups and patrols to go make sure the families are okay, to keep an eye on the agents and their homes and their families. We want them here. We want them protecting our society. But while they're protecting our families, we're going to protect theirs. So Agent Coker, we've got your back. Your colleagues, we've got their backs. You guys ensure law and order. The voters last November made loud and clear that we want to ensure law and order. We want to enforce against illegal immigration, and we will stop at nothing to protect you and keep you guys safe. We're the law and order state. So with that, I will turn it over to Sheriff Ivey.
Good morning, everybody. So I want to start out by thanking our Attorney General for joining us here in beautiful Brevard County. Our Attorney General and Governor Ron DeSantis also for their amazing support for law enforcement. Public safety in our communities is like nothing we've ever seen before. People are moving to Florida in droves because this is the free state of Florida. They're moving here because they know their families will be safe here. Their businesses will be safe. They won't have to contend with what we're seeing in places like Los Angeles and New York and Chicago, those things that are happening right now as we stand here today speaking. Our general was, I will say, very instrumental, was the tip of the spear in our blueprint for Free Florida. And now he's the tip of the spear in making sure that we are protecting what I like to call our 3 C's, our citizens, our cops, and our Constitution. And he has stood strong with not only law enforcement, but with us here in Brevard County, and we appreciate you. I'm gonna start out by addressing the doxing issue that we were talking about. Our ICE agents, just like our Florida Highway Patrol, are our partners. We all ride together in this. We all are out here to make sure that we're protecting our citizens, protecting our communities. Many of them have been called to the border. Many of them have been called to other locations to deal with the amount of fugitives and things that are going on, detainers. So for us, we will have their back. We will work closely with Colonel Howes and his team in making sure that we're increasing patrol, we're watching them. Anybody that's doxing them, as the General said, we passed a law about 4 or 5 years ago that makes it illegal to dox here in the state of Florida. So anybody that's doing that, we will take them to full task on doing it, and we will stand with you. I want to define a couple things, and our General was very kind in how he said things. I'm not as usually as elegant in how I say things, so I'm gonna first say that peaceful protests are part of our democracy. We invite people to share their opinions. That's what our country is all about. The key word in that is peaceful, and if it's peaceful, us in law enforcement are going to make sure you have a safe environment to do it in. That's part of that process. If you let it turn violent, whoo, you do not want to do that in Brevard County. I'm going to tell you that, and I believe I can speak for my fellow sheriffs around the rest of the state. You don't want to let it happen. And just so there's no confusion, because I don't want to hear any whining later saying we didn't know, I'm going to break it down for you, all right? Because as you watch these riots unfold across the rest of the country, what you are seeing is buildings being burned down, police cars being bricked, having explosive devices thrown on them, having fire, guns pointed at them, bricks thrown at them, all and on. So I'm gonna break it down for you, all right? And if somebody wants to know what I mean by turn violent, all right, this is what I mean. If you resist lawful orders, you're going to jail. Let me be very clear about that. If you block an intersection or a roadway in Brevard County, you are going to jail. If you flee arrest, you're going to go to jail tired, because we are going to run you down and put you in jail. If you try to mob rule a car in Brevard County, gathering around it, refusing to let the driver leave, in our county, you're most likely going to get run over and dragged across the street. If you spit on us, you're going to the hospital and in jail. If you hit one of us, you're going to the hospital and jail, and most likely get bitten by one of our big, beautiful dogs that we have here. If you throw a brick, a firebomb, or point a gun at one of our deputies, we will be notifying your family where to collect your remains at, because we will kill you graveyard dead. We're not going to play. This has got to stop. You're watching what's taking place out there. You're seeing police officers that are being attacked, being spit on, being put in harm's way just for doing their jobs. You're seeing ICE agents that are being targeted for doing their jobs. And you're seeing obstructionists that are doing all of this, standing in the way of law and order. Not here, not in the state of Florida. So to make it real simple, if you don't want to have any of those things happen to you, obey the law. Go protest all you want. Do it peacefully. Stand on the mountaintops and yell your opinion, your views. We invite that. But don't you dare break the law, because it won't go well for you. All right, General? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I think, our great governor, I think, said it well yesterday. If you're a family out there, you're driving, and all of a sudden you get surrounded by one of these angry demonstrations that's turned violent, you don't need to sit there and wait while people smash your window and damage your vehicle and put your family in jeopardy. You drive. Just drive. Get yourself out of harm's way. If somebody's in front of you and they're threatening your vehicle, you just drive. But we're grateful to have a great president and a governor that respect rule of law. And in Florida, you're not going to see anything like you're seeing in California. Agent Coker?
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. As he said, my name is Anthony Coker. I'm an officer with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Department of Homeland Security. Recently, I was sent down here on behalf of ICE headquarters to represent local and state law enforcement for the state of Florida. Mr. Attorney General, as a federal law enforcement officer who lives in the state of Florida, I would like to personally thank you on behalf of all federal law enforcement partners and our families who call Florida home. Knowing that you and the state of Florida have our backs while we perform these duties, we could rest easy, knowing and staying focused on the mission set forth by President Trump, Secretary Noem, Acting Director Todd Lyons, and Deputy Director Madison Shehana. Thank you, sir.
Next, we'll hear from Colonel Howes, Florida Highway Patrol.
Thank you, General. I'd like to thank Attorney General Othmeyer, Sheriff Ivey, you and your staff. Thank you for hosting us today, and all of you here in attendance. Thank you. Also, big thank you to our great Governor Ron DeSantis and my boss, Executive Director Kerner, Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, for supporting us and especially with this particular endeavor today. The kind of lawlessness that we've witnessed on the streets of California will not be tolerated in Florida. We've seen violent protests escalate to riots, businesses destroyed, communities threatened, and law enforcement officers under attack. The individuals and groups perpetrating these crimes may be considered protesters in California, but in Florida, they're considered criminals. While certain elected officials elsewhere fail to empower and deploy law enforcement resources, they also fail the very good law-abiding citizens that put them in office to provide for their public safety. We take a different approach in Florida. Governor DeSantis, Attorney General Othmeyer have led the charge in providing resources and empowering state and local law enforcement to be able to do their jobs. The message is simple in the free state of Florida. We believe in the rule of law and order. Our citizens and their rights will be protected by our law enforcement. The members of the Florida Highway Patrol have been meeting the challenges created by those seeking harm and selfishly taking advantage of others. Whether it's combating illegal immigration, stopping deadly motorists that are endangering others along our roadways, serving federal warrants, or assisting our federal and our local partners, the Highway Patrol will continue to answer the call. Make no mistake, we will not turn a blind eye to criminals endangering the safety of others and infringing on people's rights, trying to escape justice. Let me be clear on another point. The only sanctuaries in Florida are to protect animals, not criminals. Florida is not a sanctuary state. The Florida Highway Patrol has led the nation in 287G immigration enforcement, and to date we have over 2,000 UDAs in recent months that we've encountered and apprehended. We're proud to work alongside our federal and our state local partners, and we're just getting started. Our Florida sheriffs and municipal police are the best in America. And like no other place in the nation, we work together and coordinate very closely. We appreciate the trust we've earned from our federal partners who have sworn in the majority of your Florida state troopers to assist them as resource multipliers in their immigration and federal enforcement efforts. Our federal enforcement agencies have a sworn obligation to protect not just Florida, but our nation. That is why we are deeply disturbed at recent targeting of them and their families. These men and women risk their lives every day to protect our country. With that, the Florida Highway Patrol will do everything legally within our power to defend and stand alongside our federal law enforcement partners. We will not allow these officers to be threatened, harassed, or harmed while carrying out their duties on Florida soil, and I encourage other jurisdictions to adopt that also. For those who may consider committing crimes against law enforcement officers, your actions will be regretted. Florida law enforcement will exhaust every resource available to bring you to justice. And lastly, we recognize that behind every badge of a cop is a heartbeat of a selfless servant that's trying to make our communities safer for all of us. We don't forget that. So thank you, General Othmeyer, for your support.
not just of your Florida Highway Patrol, but of law enforcement in Florida. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, we've got the best law enforcement in the country. Our leaders in Florida, we know full well what it means to put the badge on every day, knowing full well that it could be your last. And that line between right and wrong, good and bad, it is a heartbeat. It's people that put their lives on the line to keep our families safe. And we're going to fight as much as we can to keep Florida the safest state in the union. Last but not least, Florida's public safety czar, Larry Keefe.
Good morning. I'm going to sort of dovetail off Colonel Howe's remarks a moment ago about every law enforcement officer, fed, state, local, behind that badge is a heartbeat and is a real person that goes home after their shift, hopefully. They're always at risk whenever they go out. So I'm going to speak and direct my remarks and focus my remarks today on the families of the law enforcement officers, and also the time when they're not out on an operation or a mission, and give you my perspectives on those to kind of overlay on the things that you've already heard. I have a son who's a federal law enforcement officer. I had a brother who was a Florida police officer. I have some experience or frame of reference with the concern and worry that's always there. There's something very special and very different in a very important way about the families of our military, people who serve in the military, and our law enforcement officers. There's just something special and unique and just extraordinarily honorable about that. And that's because of a particularly good reason, and that's because they are special and different. And to, at least from my perspective on appreciating the specialness and why they are different, is related to the overall notion of what I call the blue line of law enforcement, the separation from complete anarchy and chaos in order, in structure, and predictability, so we can live our lives, so we can educate our children, raise our families, worship freely as we wish. And really, at the end of the day, the only thing separating us from one or the other, order or chaos, is that blue line. And I saw in the sheriff's office a flag with the blue line, and it is exactly that. But unfortunately, it's a very thin blue line that separates us, separates those two things, order and chaos. And that, in my perspective, enables everything else: education, transportation, economics, all those other things, all the things that make up our lives. If you don't have the predictability and the ability to wake up each day and know that you can go about your lives and go about your business with that trust of stability, that means everything. The Attorney General has on his challenge coin the words safe, strong, and free. All of us are able to live safe, strong, and free, at least in the state of Florida, because of that thin blue line. Well, as everyone has mentioned and everyone's spoken of and everyone has seen the news recently, it reminds us of the summer of 2020 with the riots and the chaos and the burning and the disruption and the disorder. All of those things seem to be being revisited upon us. And the way I look at that is there are people who, a fair election, they're not successful in imposing their worldview through a fair election. They're not effective at formulating their message and conveying their message of their worldview via peaceful protest, as the sheriff pointed out, which is sacred protective activity in this country. But what these people seek to do is impose their will on you and our country through rioting, through acts of terror, fear, intimidation, and those things. And we've seen that visited upon cities and shutting down roadways to disrupt and interrupt your life, to where just to make it stop, you'll tolerate whatever it is that they want you to do. There is a new tactic, which has been adverted to in some of the earlier remarks, and that is the idea of not just going after disrupting the establishment, disrupting the people that voted in elections, disrupted the people that are trying to raise their family and live their lives, but of zeroing in and putting in the crosshairs the law enforcement officers that are out in conducting their missions, in this instance, enforcing immigration law, and then those who are trying to protect them while they're doing their job to enforce immigration law, and you've seen it on TV, spitting on them, throwing bricks at them, all the horribles that you heard gone through. But there's a new and different tactic, and that is to get behind the officer, the faceless, nameless officer, to find out who that officer is, where they live, who their family is, where they live, and releasing this personally identifying information. Because the strategy is, if you get inside the head of that law enforcement officer and that law enforcement officer's family, those special, unique, and different people, if you get inside their head, they'll back off. They'll lay back. Like we saw in the summer of 2020, where they just stayed in their cars. They abandoned government buildings just to let them burn at the whims of the prevailing politicians of the day. That is the new tactic. That is why we're here today, because the state of Florida, laws are words on paper, and they mean nothing unless you have the ability to back it up. And so law enforcement in the state of Florida is a pretty sacred thing, as you all know from our governor, our attorney general, and all of our leadership in Florida. It's a big deal here. We are not California. So the state of Florida, as announced by the attorney general today, has taken on this posture that Florida is going to honor, respect, and protect 24/7 this Overwatch, not just ICE officers when they're out doing operations, but when they get in their car and when they go home, so that their families can go about their business knowing Florida has their backs, so that they, like you all, can enjoy living in a safe, strong, and free way here in the state of Florida. Lastly, those of you who have been following the immigration efforts here in Florida, for us to support and assist our federal partners proactively, not just waiting for the phone to ring, that Florida is creating the national blueprint. We're creating the national blueprint on how we approach the overall immigration challenge, how to find, sort, detain, deport. We're doing all of those things, and we're documenting kind of the state of the art on how to do it so it can be scaled and used by other states throughout the country. This is going to be added to it. There's no reason other states shouldn't have the backs of the federal law enforcement officers and their families while they're in California or in any of the other states. So that will be added to the Florida blueprint. Thank you.
All right, everybody, you heard it. In Florida, we will protect our protectors. I think we've got time for a few questions if anybody has any. Go ahead.
Two-part question. For immigrants who are detained, is there any process by your office that they're going to receive due process? And those who are detained, will they be housed centrally here? Will they have access to their families and legal representation, or will they be sent anywhere around the state?
The question is about due process for illegal immigrants that are detained. I will point out, when people flood across the border on the way in, during the Biden open border policies, and questions weren't asked, there was no conversation, they were just handed a piece of paper to show up at some certain time, months or even years down the road, nobody was talking about process. Now suddenly, when we're talking about getting people out of the country that are here illegally, everybody's talking about process. Well, we follow rule of law. Everybody will get due process. They don't necessarily need to be free roaming around to get process. We'll keep them locked up while they go through it. But they will be detained. We will follow, every bit of the law while we're going through that process. As far as where they're relocated and housed, that'd be a question largely for the federal government as they, take over custody. Anybody else?
A quick question, just on timing of the announcement. Were you trying to get this message out ahead of these national protests scheduled for June 14th?
Yes, we want to put the public on notice in Florida and remind everybody, we have a law that says you cannot riot. We have enhanced penalties. If you engage in this behavior in Florida, you will do time. So yes, we want to put the public on notice. Don't do it. And I think it's important for people at home to realize, what's going on in California. It's not just Joe Schmo sitting at home on the couch saying, I don't like what's going on. I want to go out and express, my view. And we respect peaceful protests. The First Amendment is important. But what's really happening is you have large, sophisticated, deep-pocketed, paid organizations that are funding these efforts. They're funding these violent demonstrations. They are funding violence and destruction. That is what the left wants. And shame on, Democrat officials that are not condemning this across the country. This is violence. This is danger. This is putting families and their safety in jeopardy. So thanks be to God, we've got a wonderful governor and a great president that want to protect families and want to enforce rule of law.
Mr. Attorney General, are you surprised to see this kind of resistance you're describing around the nation when this panel was just saying it's simply important
I'd like to say I'm surprised to see these types of violent disruptions, but unfortunately, they've become all too familiar in blue states. And I think that's why you're seeing so many families flocking to red states that are not sanctuary states for illegal immigration and recklessness and lawlessness. We stand on principle, we stand on protecting families, and that's why, you know, Florida continues to see people flocking in to take advantage of that safety. One more.
Sir, this is off topic. Apologies. Would you be able to comment on the status of former Sheriff Lopez of the Osceola County?
Unfortunately, I can't while that investigation continues to be ongoing. But thanks for the question. All right, thanks everybody.